Which Side Podcast is a proud member of the Which Side Media Collective.
This week's episode is brought to you by the Which Side Media Collective store. For the rest of this month, you can get totes for only $7.50. $7.50. That's all of our tote designs. So every design that we have as shirts is available as a tote as well. And you can get that. No promo code needed.
Go order them up, y'all. They're freaking phenomenal. I went grocery shopping yesterday. Used 3 of the bags. Mm-hmm. I got a comment on all 3 of them.
Nice.
They're like, "Oh, so you're vegan?" I'm like, "Oh, did it take you reading vegan 17 times to pick up on that?" So go make a statement with the bags. $7.50.
WhичSideCollective.org.
This is episode 203.
Yeah, we talk with Ria Montana.
Yeah, we talk a lot about rewilding in this episode, so stay tuned for that. Hey, Jordan, what news and info do we have going on this week?
Well, not that I would ever pat the BOP on the back, but beginning October 2nd, vegan meals will be available in all federal prisons.
BOP, for everyone not in the know, was Bureau of Prisons.
Yes.
It took me a second to click for, yeah.
So, I mean, that's a really good improvement for... especially
all federal?
All federal. So there's still 1,700, state prisons that have their own things going on. But at least the 200 so federal prisons are going to have vegan meals.
Yeah, and another quasi-decent thing, again, not patting them on the back, but they also announced that federally they're going to get rid of all privatized prisons, right?
Yeah, they'll start to.
They're just not renewing contracts, so they're just slowly phasing them out.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean they're going away. They're still state facilities, so still fuck them, but yeah.
But, I mean, most animal liberation prisoners go to federal prison anyway, so
that is true.
That's good.
That is very good. That is awesome. That's good. That's good news.
So to follow up with that, be sure to write prisoners. They could always use some love. Right now, there's national prison strike going on in a lot of places, so prisoners could use your love and support. Send a letter. If you do, let us know.
For the slingshot this week, September 30th, 1962. That's when Cesar Chavez founded the National Farm Workers Association.
There's a Cesar Chavez Boulevard in Utah.
There is. Little side note here. My daughter, her school, they had to do reports on, they called it the Living Museum, where they had to dress up like a character. Mm-hmm. Someone in her class picked Cesar Chavez. Fantastic report.
It's a 9-year-old, right?
He was 8.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
an 8-year-old.
That's awesome.
I sincerely hope you enjoyed this episode.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side? Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you on?
How's your day going so far?
Pretty good. I added my Skype picture. I don't know if you want to use the one that I'm profiling on my Skype, because I just washed my hair today for the first time in like 6 months. So I wanted to show you what it was like.
No worries. Yeah, whatever picture you want us to use, if you just wanted to send it to either the email address we just emailed you on or Mari's, either would work, and we can go ahead and use that.
Cool.
Thank you. So
you just washed your hair in 6 months?
Yeah, so it's kind of one of the ways that I try to stay in touch with being a primitivist, is in a kind of like anti-civ, anti-consumerist, is I don't really wash my hair very often. It's such an odd topic to start on, but And the thing is that when I go outside, people love my hair. I get compliments about it all the time. I'll have old ladies come up to me and start like stroking my hair. And then like young women come up to me and say, how do you get your hair like that? And I tell them I haven't washed my hair in like half a year. And when I do, I just use like baking soda and vinegar. It's really not a big deal. But I just thought it'd be an interesting way to start a conversation about primitivism, huh?
So does that using the baking soda and vinegar, does that just not strip all the oils out? Or does it strip all the oils out when you use it? I
just noticed that it kind of works for me, and I don't even know or care what it does, really. It's really fine. You know, I almost feel like I could never, ever wash my hair. So,
on a complete, like, separate note, you say that people just come up to you and touch your hair. I hate when people just touch me without asking.
Yeah. It's such a weird thing. Like, sometimes I am into it, and it's like, okay. But sometimes it's just totally awkward. Yeah. So where do people touch you at?
Oh, I don't know. It's just like anything. It'd be, I don't know.
You probably get your curly hair.
Yeah, when I grow my hair out, it gets curly. So they'll touch my curly hair. Or if I buzz my head, they'll rub the buzzed head. Or
I used to poke you like the Pillsbury Doughboy.
I don't know, that kind of thing. But mainly even like shoulder touch or hand touch. It's like, nah, I don't like to, I have my bubble.
Do random people just come grab your hand?
No, it's, if somebody's like talking to you and they're like, hey, thanks so much, and they touch your shoulder. Have you had that ever happen to you?
No.
That happens to me.
So you must be putting out some kind of a vibe or something that
I guess.
So with the starting off the whole idea of like not washing your hair, like what was your origin into anarcho-primitivism?
Well, I think I was born that way. And I kind of like was fighting civilization my entire life and just came to realize it more and more the older I got. Like I remember back when I was like 2, 3, 4 years old, just being out like by myself in nature and sometimes with some really young friends also. And just, it just felt so right. And I just feel like our species is born that way, just like all species are.
Was your family in a similar way?
Oh, I don't know how old you guys are, but I was in the generation where kids really got a lot of freedom. Like we were outside playing so much of the time. And it was back when children were also, like houses were oftentimes next to natural areas. Like we almost always had like fields or forest or mountains or whatever, like right at my back door. And because we got the freedom to roam and parents really like wanted you to be out there and, they had work to do. So we were like super glad to be out there enjoying all of our freedom. Yeah. And I almost feel like, it's the, when you started school, that's when it started in really heavy with civilization just pounding away at you.
So if you feel like you've always been kind of like a primitivist, when did the vegan aspect creep into that?
What's weird is somehow, it's such a vague memory, but somehow I knew when I was offered fish for the first time, I knew that it was an animal, and so I refused it. So my whole life I never ate fish. But for some reason, I didn't figure out that chicken was an animal and hamburgers and hot dogs. And so by the time I realized it, like it had been normalized, so I kind of just went along with the flow, even though I still didn't eat fish. It's kind of like a contradiction. And then I didn't even hear the word vegetarian until I was 17 years old. I'm 51 now. So, quite a while ago, my high school English teacher mentioned it somehow, and then it just really rang true for me, like this feeling I had been having for a long time. So then I was vegetarian until 15 years ago, and I went vegan at my son's behalf.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
So what happened with that?
So, well, let's see. I had tried to go vegan before, but it was really, I was finding it too challenging and struggling with it. And then my son, when he was 13, he, like, I don't know how much to expose about him, but he kind of became an anarchist and he was getting involved with some anarchist animal lib stuff. And he went vegan overnight. And then all of a sudden, like, as a mother, I was like, how am I going to make sure that he gets all the nutrients and stuff that he needs? And so I started really focusing on it. And then I realized how easy it was. So then it was so odd. All of a sudden, he was after me to go vegan. So I just went vegan overnight. I was ready for it anyway, but, you know, like, I couldn't stand much of his bashing anyway, so...
Did you raise him vegetarian?
No, I raised him as a meat eater, which, you know, in hindsight, I have huge regrets about. It's kind of a different age. Like, when I got pregnant, that was one of the questions they asked about was my diet. When they found out I was vegetarian, they said that I had to eat meat or, like, it could hurt my son. And so then after he was born... I was breastfeeding him. Like, I was really glad to be able to go vegetarian again. And then somehow came up in conversation with another doctor, and they said, well, you have to keep eating meat to keep giving him the nutrients he needs. And I don't know why. It was just, like, so stupid or something. I couldn't figure it out at that time. So I ate meat while I was breastfeeding him. And then I forget, what was the question?
If you had raised him vegetarian, but
yeah, and so then after I stopped breastfeeding, he was 2.5, and we were both vegetarian then. And then when he was 4, his doctors started asking about his diet. You know, all of these are different doctors, by the way. It seemed to be a systematic kind of issue. Mm-hmm. And when she found out that he was vegetarian, she started, like, really shaming me, scolding me, and, like, writing it up in his medical records and doing these extra tests. And so I decided to just let him eat what he wanted to eat. And so he went from a meat eater to vegan overnight when he was 13.
Wow.
How does he feel about that history of, like, the medical establishment kind of forcing outdated, you know, ideas onto you about how to properly, you know, feed a child?
Yeah, well, I've apologized to him for going along with the system. Like, right now, I would totally know better than that. But so a couple times it's come up, and I've apologized to him, and he says, it's no problem. I'm just glad that you didn't, like, let me have sugar and stuff like that. So he's a sweet kid. He's, he's 28 now, and he's a world backpacker, goes all around. He's been on, like, 6 continents, and he's been doing this for, I think, more than 8 years now. So he's just really, you know, lighthearted, hippie kind of kid, very loving, sweet. Yeah.
Do you find it hard raising a child and trying to instill these high idealistic mindsets into how you're raising them?
Well, you know, it's hard to fit in. You guys have kids?
I do, yeah.
You know, like the resistance you come up against when you bring your kids to a party, or if they're in a larger culture, the larger culture, mainstream especially. It seems like you're constantly bumping up against differences in values, and it can be pretty intense. And, you know, especially if the family isn't on board with you also. I don't know what your situation is, but you kind of like have to start drawing lines in places, and it can just be uncomfortable.
Yeah, we had to draw the line like right at the get-go. It was, these are our values, and if you don't respect these values, then we can't be around you, because these are the values we want around our daughter. So luckily we drew those boundaries very early on with our family, and for the most part have been extremely respected.
Oh, you're lucky.
Yeah, no, I'm fully lucky, yeah.
I tried to draw some boundaries, and they were like, you could tell they were just going along with it, and they didn't really want to, and they would like do things behind my back. Like they felt like I was abusing my kid because, he couldn't have Halloween candy or whatever it was, or pop, or meat, during the time he was vegetarian. And so they would just sneak stuff to him. So I was lucky to live a little bit further away from them, and the distance helped a lot.
It's hard for me to believe that people feel like they can just do what they want and disrespect people like that. It's really hard.
Yeah, I don't get it.
So did your son also, you said that your son's an anarchist, sorry to keep bringing him up, but did he also follow like the primitivist path? He's the way he lives his life is probably actually more primitivist than the way I live mine. Because, he's just always outside. He doesn't feel comfortable. He says he feels most comfortable when he's so far away, or something like 50 miles away or more from any McDonald's, and so far out of civilization that he doesn't have cell phone connection. Like, he wants to be totally, totally out of it and just engrossed in nature and sleeping under the stars. One time he and I went to Venezuela, and we went to, I met up with him because he was traveling all around, and we decided to meet up in Venezuela, and we went to this really super remote indigenous area close to the Amazon, like southeast Venezuela. And we were with this indigenous, like the chief and his wife, and we were sleeping in their home and got to be there a couple weeks with those people. It was such an amazing experience on so many levels. Actually, there was someone had written a book about them, I found out later. They're the Pomone people, Cherry Cayenne, and someone wrote a book about them being an anarchist indigenous community. Yeah, it's kind of interesting in hindsight. But so it was supposedly a volunteer program, which it really wasn't. We were just hanging out with them. And afterwards, some organization that had arranged the hookup with us and these people, they wanted to give us certificates for graduating from some volunteer experience. And so I just accepted it. And then when they went to give Sean his certificate, he gracefully declined. And the guy said, well, don't you want to take this home and put it on your wall? And Sean said, I hope to never have walls. That just says so much about him.
So getting back to just the whole idea of primitivism, it's something that I have flirted with for a very long time, and I think in my mind it's a little romanticized. But every single time I kind of take a deeper look into it, I find myself pulling away from it in certain aspects. More specifically within me, the idea that the call of wanting to live that lifestyle seems to be almost a privileged aspect of life, be able to be privileged enough to choose to be able to do that, where a lot of society doesn't have unfortunately the choice to be able to do that. How do you respond to those type of criticisms, and then how can you help me maybe come to grips with it, not romanticizing it and taking it a little more seriously?
That's a really good question. I've been in conversation with this one person about a similar issue, and admittedly, it is a privilege, at least for, some of us. Some might venture into it without, like the privilege that most people end up needing to get into it. But when you look at the earth today, and there's no escaping, everything I look at, everything I hear, almost everything is domesticated earth. And the few little niches that are left, like, if we just keep exploiting it and keep using it for our own pleasure, then, then the people who are able to get out there and exploit it and use it as hunter-gatherers or, recreationalists are part of the problem. So I don't look at it like a privilege. I look at it like rewilding for yourself is part of a problem from my view. I feel like we have a calling. I hear Earth just crying at me, and I feel called to try to help heal Earth and undo some of the damage that our species has done. So I don't know, like, are you talking about rewilding yourself or doing work to rewild Earth?
Kind of both, because in some aspects, to as you put it, to rewild yourself, you have to be in a situation where you're able to, like, a lot of people within deep inner cities might even have the privilege to even understand that this is an idea, right? That this is even a possibility that exists, or to the aspect of that it's not something that, from at least my point of view and my understanding, that is sustainable for the current world's population, which would mean that if we did rewild everybody or didn't take that step backwards as a species, that we would have a dramatic drop in the actual count in species, which would count to almost like a genocide of the human species just to move forward to this ideal.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel like we're on the path of genocide right now. Like, when you look around and look at, say, if you did a statistical analysis of all of the deaths, human deaths, and account how many of them or what percentage can be traced directly or indirectly to civilization. I think civilization is a genocide, and it's kind of ironic that one of the ways to escape that is to depopulate through rewilding. In order for us to rewild, there's no way you can do it with the numbers we got now.
So is that something that you personally advocate for within the seek of anarcho-primitivism, is the depopulation of the human species?
I don't see any other way around it. There's no way we can stay on this track. I think a lot of people can't visualize it, but there's a lot of people, like, I was just born sensing it, and that I should not bring another person onto Earth, even though I have a son. He was an accident that I decided to stay with. Like, when I was starting to get sexually active, I did not want it to result in a pregnancy, even if I was being safe. And so I started going to doctors and saying, can you tie my tubes? I was like 18. And every year at my annual exam, I would ask them, and they started citing this one rule that they have. You have to be 30 years old, have at least 3 children, and your husband has to approve. And I was like, what? So, eventually when I was like 23 or 22, I accidentally got pregnant and decided to keep the pregnancy. But it was just driving me nuts that, I felt like I really shouldn't be doing this. So I started begging the doctor, please, can you tie my tubes when I give birth? And they started saying, well, you're probably having hormonal issues, stuff like that. And so they refused. And then, like, at the follow-up appointment, here I am talking about the medical again. But anyway, at the follow-up appointment, my son was like 4 weeks old, and when I went to my doctor for my end of it, I was begging him, and I just started crying and saying, I never wanted to have kids. I don't want to have any more kids. He started reciting the same rule. You got to be 33 kids and your husband's permission. And I was like, look, I'm not even married, and I don't even want to be with this guy. Like, I don't want to even have to get this guy's permission. And so the doctor said, I'll tell you what, if you go to a psychiatrist and get it in writing that you're making a sane decision, in essence, then I'll do it. And so I had to do that. I went to a psychiatrist. And fortunately, I got someone who understood right away and only made me come one time and wrote up the notes. So I got my tubes tied. After my son was born, I had to go back in and have surgery. But I just feel like it's something I sense. And I've talked with like other guys about this who, I don't know if it's a West Coast phenomena or what, but there's lots of people on the West Coast that seem to don't want to have children. And every once in a while I'll come up in conversation with a guy, and I'll tell them my story, and they'll say the same thing happened to me. Like the doctor, they would go in and ask for a vasectomy, and the doctor would say you got to be 30 and have 3 kids, but they didn't have to have the wife's permission.
I've even heard of certain contraceptives not being authorized until you've had a child, or you're at least 30 or something.
It's so nuts, but you go in and you want an abortion, and it's not that, you shouldn't be granted an abortion, but it just seems so much easier. Like the doctors don't say the same things to you. Like they'll say, well, this is a decision that you might end up regretting later, or you can't undo it, so, I don't feel comfortable with it. They'll say that if you want your tubes tied, but not if you want an abortion, per se. They won't deny it because of that.
That just seems so fucking insane to me. To
right?
have that mindset. I mean, it, on so many levels, like not just the whole idea of like you have to ask for your husband permission, but just the idea that you don't have that individual control over your own body. Just so infuriating. Yeah,
it really is. I wonder if they still do it.
I think they do in a lot of ways. I think,
especially what surprised me, especially going into like certain like religious areas of the country, maybe like the Bible Belt or something. I know I'm like totally just calling out certain areas. It's probably a lot more widespread than we want to acknowledge.
Yeah, it could be.
At least maybe not the husband aspect, but at least the age and whether or not you're making a rational decision if you're not 30.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So one of the questions that I've always had with primitivism that I don't feel I've ever gotten it explained to me to my level of satisfaction, which is the whole idea of domestication. When does domestication bad or when is it good? I've had some primitivists tell me making a tool is domestication. I've had other ones say that that's not domestication. So in your idea, where does the idea of domestication come into play, and at what point does that become a negative that creates hierarchy?
Yeah, so that's a really deep question also, and it goes really far back. John Zerzan has the definition, something like if you make a tool that you yourself can make without like relying or depending on other people to make it for you, then that's fine. But once you start into, and I think Derek Jensen goes there too, once you start into needing other people to have some involvement in the process of making your piece of technology, whether it's a tool or whatever, then that's the beginning of domestication. I don't know. I'm going to go really, really far back and say, it's early Homo sapiens are way earlier than that, maybe even. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, personally, like, I don't think making a spoon or a knife or something, if if you're able to make that with the tools that you have, I wouldn't really consider that domestication.
Well, and this is like where the idea of romanticizing the idea of primitivism with me kind of hits the road, and I have to hit my reality and where the disconnect happens with me personally, because like when Zirzan talks about the idea of specialization, to me that is just specialization is just acquired knowledge through your everyday life, right? And so every person has a different everyday life, so you're all going to acquire certain specializations based on that. And I don't believe that necessarily in of itself creates hierarchy. So I have a hard time with the idea that anything that has any level of specialization is inherently negative. That's why, like, for me, that's like the first place of disconnect happens.
Mm-hmm. So like playing roles, like people have different roles. Yeah.
Then I guess kind of like my whole idea is, like, if there was like let's say civilization collapsed, technology no longer existed, we'll still have a lot of things left over. And I personally don't find any problem using some of the things we have left over.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's going back to scavenger. This is a world we live in, like I try to make my life about scavenging, like dumpster diving and stuff, and I feel like that's part of being primitive. Scavenging is way before hunting.
How do you approach the idea of people with either diminished mental or physical capabilities, and how do they play a role into your vision of anarcho-primitivism?
Is that the ableist issue?
Yeah, like where somebody who either doesn't have the full mental capacity to be able to do the things to the full level that a normal human would be, or the physical capacity to, so they would require somebody to have that specialization for them.
Well, I'm not like 100% solid on it, but my immediate thoughts are that a lot of people, we've brought ourselves into this situation and we're kind of stuck with it and got to deal with it. But there were a lot of people with our early ancestors who took care. Caretaking was something that happened long ago, and people found their own ways to take care of each other back then. The thing is that we're stuck in this situation right now. So then it's, how do you back out as gracefully, gently as you can without hurting too many people in the process? Obviously, it's got to be a transition. Like, I can really see this happening. I can see it happening even rather quickly. Like, if people start getting that sense that we should stop so much breeding, the human species should, and if that idea starts catching on like wildfire a little bit, then in a few generations we could step back into something that's more coexistence with the rest of the world. So it would, if you can imagine, we've stepped forward to this point, and now we're going to figure out a way to step backwards and do it with causing little harm as possible.
Doesn't the idea of having to care for others in of itself create a civilization?
I would almost say the opposite, that civilization creates a situation where we're actually like at war and stuff. We're killing each other. It's a mixed bag. Either way, you're not going to have a utopia. It's, you got to look at the entire picture, I guess, and weigh it. And to me, it's just so obviously clear that there's so much harm, so much destruction and suffering, everywhere you look on this planet. And if we keep walking down this path, it's just a dream that, magic thinking that it's going to be anything other than continued suffering and, pain, unnecessarily too. It's, just an artificial life that we're living. It just feels so unreal, it's it just doesn't, it feels like something's amiss to me. And
one of the things that I've always found really interesting is that next to like Christian anarchist, anarcho-primitivists seem to me to be the next sect of anarchism with the most level of spirituality associated with it. Would you agree that like spirituality is a key aspect of anarcho-primitivism?
I mean, for some people, it seems to be. Like I just remember like people asking me, because when they'd find out that I was atheist, they would, have assumptions about what that means compared to religious people who have a religion. And I guess the bottom line is the bottom line. Like if your religion or spirituality is going to help you to, be a helpful person on the planet or, reduce your suffering. So maybe it depends on how your spirituality plays out. We have the Christian crusades and all kinds of religions that go around doing all kinds of massive harm. So, and then I'm sure you have atheists or whatever on both sides of it. So I feel like I don't have tons of answers, but I just have like this vision that it is possible that we can, we can step backwards. We can have like a future primitive, like Zerzin's book.
So for you, what are those steps that need to happen to see that take place?
So I see the main thing is we can't rewild ourselves in a world that is what it is today. So even if you look at it through a selfish lens, like I want to be rewilded, in order to be rewilded, you have to have a rewilded earth. So you can't just go out in whatever's left and try to rewild yourself and ignore it. If you're part of being rewilded is being connected to nature. And if you don't hear Earth screaming right now, then you are by no means connected to nature. So Earth is screaming at us right now for help, saying stop it, number one. So I feel like, number one, we have to stop what we're doing. We have to smash civilization. And then number two is we have to start trying to undo some of the damage that we've done to this planet. Rewilding Earth instead of focusing so much on rewilding ourselves. I think if we're rewilding Earth and if we're supporting and or taking part in smashing civilization, then I think we're going to find our path to rewilding ourselves in the process.
How exactly do we approach these steps?
A lot of them are already happening. There's a lot of divisions between different groups of people. Like me with the hunter-gatherers, we're both anarcho-primitivists, but, it can be rather contentious at times, the vegans versus the hunters within that subsect. But, like, for example, there are conservation groups. Yeah, they are, nonprofits or government organizations or the government itself, and they are doing deeds that are conserving nature. And it fucking sucks that, it's the fucking government that we have to work with in some of this, or even nonprofits. But that's the reality of it. Right now, they are doing some decent work in rewilding and conserving some land, some habitat for a lot of life. So we may not like it, but maybe there's a way we could work with them. Maybe we could, learn skills from them and then take them and apply them in our own ways in other areas to expand the rewilding Earth. That's one of the things I'm doing now. There's there's a forest and a wetlands and an estuary that I'm stewarding, and it's through a program that is a collaboration between a nonprofit and the city park. And we get all kinds of volunteers coming in, so I lead restoration events. And, a lot of people would say that's hypocritical for an anarchist to be out there, volunteering for the government and, just contributing to it, being a part of it. So I say it sucks that I have to do it this way, but this is the reality that I'm dealing with right now. And I feel like we're reaching a lot of people, giving hands-on skills for doing a lot of this restoration work, and hopefully, serving as part of the wildfire of getting people to steward and undo some of the damage.
So what is that program that you're working with? You mind going a little more into detail of what you're doing there?
Yeah, so it's Green Seattle Partnership. About 10 years ago, they kind of looked around and realized that the invasives were really overtaking the natural areas with, plants and animals in particular, and that something had to be done or it was going to become, monoculture and, could even... A lot of our natural areas here in Seattle are kind of like the leftover places that people couldn't build on. So it's very slopey, lots of sloughing and landslide and, areas that are a bit more less home building friendly. And so we started getting a variety of different invasives coming in and just totally taking over. And, like in one of the parks I steward, there used to be a fox, and about 20 years ago, off-leash dogs mauled it to death. So there's no more foxes in that area, and there were screech owls, and so human encroachment and fragmenting up what was left of our natural areas, and invasive plants and invasive animals has really degraded what the few little remnants that were remaining here. And relatively speaking, we have quite a bit of natural area here in Seattle because it is so slopey around here. But I forget what your question was again.
About the organization?
Oh, so they looked at it and they said, we've got to do something because it's just getting degraded so quickly. So there was the Seattle Parks, and at the time it was Cascade Lands Conservancy came together, and they they piloted this program, and it was a 20-year project. So right now we're like at the halfway mark of it. And they have volunteers. They train them and support them in restoration techniques and leading events for volunteers, helping out. And there's in our city, there are thousands of people who are in one way or another partaking in this. There are hundreds of people who are forest stewards. So we're really lucky to, be able to learn about and keep these skills, because after collapse, and we're in the middle of collapse right now, and it's going to keep collapsing. One of the things we're going to have to do, is to continue to work on undoing the damage, because civilization, even if even if civilization dies overnight, the consequences they're already set in motion for natural areas. And so we're going to have to learn to deal with these problems that we've introduced and to keep undoing the damage long after civilization is gone.
So what is something with inside either the anarcho-primitivist animal rights spheres or just anarchist spheres in general that you see happening that you wish would change?
I think there's a lot of friction between groups. Right now there's this whole thing with the hunter-gatherers, and it seems like it's almost, to me, I don't mean to be negative about it with them, but it feels to me like it's like a macho thing or patriarchal thing. It's a continuation of the dominion. And I almost wouldn't mind these people going out doing their hunter-gathering thing, learning those skills and stuff, if they were also just as much focused on smashing civilization and undoing the damage, like healing Earth. But it just seems like it's more of a, I don't know, self-centered, it's just more of the same is the way I see it.
No intersect kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that they can, I wish that they would be more open to, and a lot of what they do also is they have this magical thinking with these silly little excuses for not healing Earth. Like they'll say things like, well, nature can take care of itself, or, it's only natural for a species to move around. You should stop intervening. It's not up to you to play God. But they really are understanding, like and they also have a thing against science, which, I think to some extent has, their argument against science can be legitimate, but I still think they're not totally getting it. Like, to me, it comes to me on a brain level, like a thinking level, but I also just sense it. Like, the first plant I ever planted was a memorial tree for my brother. And when I would keep going back to that tree, and when I saw other plants coming and climbing on top of him over and over, I would, rip them off. And it was like an emotional, even though I'm anarchist, it was a spiritual thing for me. I felt like I was taking care of my brother when I was ripping those invasive plants off of him. And then after I did that for a while and kept protecting that tree, I looked around and realized it was happening to other evergreens as well. So I had this emotional commitment. It came from a really powerful place. And then after I got that emotional commitment, I started learning more about it. So the science end of it just came to help me with the emotional commitment that was developing.
You mentioned the criticism of the science. I'm kind of unfamiliar with the criticism of the science that they levy. So would you mind elaborating on that a little bit?
I think it's just about bias. And I almost see it the other side. Like, for example, there's been when paleoanthropologists go back and look at early humans, they oftentimes will just make an assumption, like when they're looking at dentine and teeth and they find evidence of plant material, they will say, there was a lot of dependence on plants and, talk about the size of the teeth and all that stuff. But then they'll say, it's safe to assume that they were also eating insects or small lizards or whatever, but there's no evidence of that. So there's a bias that's pro-meat that our scientists keep, it just infiltrating all their studies. So I agree with them that there is a lot of bias in the science, and also because the science is oftentimes working for getting paid by the government. It's part of the hierarchical system. You get all of the consequences of that. But at the same time, there is some truth to it that you have a lot of invasives that are coming in and not co-adapting with the ecosystem communities, and they're, becoming turning these lush, diverse communities of life into monocultures. And when you start being able to see it through, emotionally and through your brain too, or thinking, then it's hard to ignore. And then you need the science. You need to know, what the plants are and then what you can do to help.
So getting back to the previous question, what is something inside these movements that you see happening that you would like to see happen more of?
Definitely we need a wildfire of people healing Earth together. And there's getting more and more acceptance of the permaculture movement. It's still kind of shuffling species around for human reasons, the way I see it. So I wanted to go even further and say we're healing Earth just for Earth's sake, not for our own. And then you get the division between people who say, well, humans are also animals and we have a rightful place in this on this planet. And to that I say, what is the human habitat? You know, if we are animals, all animals have a habitat that they live in to coexist with other life. So you have to live within the limitations of habitat if you're going to be animal.
To go off topic a tiny bit, you mentioned that you've always felt like you were a primitivist. When did anarchism come into play? Is that similar, or?
I think because I had so much freedom in the beginning, like, you know, I was able to just get out there and roam. In the earliest years, I think I was an anarchist. I didn't see, you know, in my small part of the world, which was like my backyard, the field, and the forest edge, at that point in time, I wasn't able to sense all of the different systems that were, you know, oppressive to Earth and to me and hindering me from being an animal. But I think overall, considering, you know, where Earth is at today, I think that I had so much freedom in the way I was able to behave with other people and in nature. It was probably fairly similar to, you know, early humans. With the exception that I didn't have primitivist adults around or even primitivist older children. It was, you know, a group of preschoolers mainly.
Well, I can't believe it's already about an hour. How can people get in touch with you and find out more about your work?
So I'm at, I can't remember. It's a little bit tricky, my website. Anarcho-primitivism, no, hang on, veganarcho-primitivism.com. veganarcho-primitivism.com. And I have a book that I wrote that, I mean, it's kind of about a personal adventure I went with my son on one of our little hippie quests. And that's called Hippie Paradise, a vegan ecofeminist rant on Hawaii's Kauai Island. It's by Ria and Brian.
And where's that book available? Is it available on your website?
On Amazon.
Hey, we'll put a link to that in the show notes then.
Yeah. Well, we end every episode saying fuck, shit, damn. Would you mind saying it for us this week?
I'll go further than that. Fuck, shit, damn, son of a bitch. I don't give a flying fuck.
This week you heard
Rapture at Sea by Eastern Sun and John Kelley.
Right now you're listening to
Titan by Moss of Aura.
You know, every week we say, hey, please go rate and review us on iTunes, and we're going to continue doing that because it's just that important. To give you a quick idea, I just checked right now. If you look up the word vegan on iTunes right now, we are the 20th thing to come up. Out of that, most of those things aren't even coming out anymore. So help us get above the fray and just get those good search results, right? And you can do that just by simply rating and reviewing the show. So please go do that. And, you know, tell your friends about the show.
We got to get above the Dead podcast because we're on a live podcast.
It's impossible to get above the Dead podcast. There's one on there that's the number one. It's been the number one since we started, and it's been dead since the podcast came out.
Vegan free.
No,
No?
it's just called Vegan. I don't know what it is. And they have like 10 episodes. Every one of them was just like Vegan 01, Vegan 02.
Yeah, that'll take a while.
Yeah.
So help us.
Help us, please.
And while you're on the internet doing that, you should become our friend. Follow us on social media. We often talk about things that we don't talk about on the show. Often means every day. We post links to news clips, videos, and also past episodes and other things that we're doing with the collective and the podcast itself. So hit us up. Be our friend. WhичSidePodcast.com. Click on the social tab.
So, it's that time of week again?
The FSD.
Can we just leave it at FSD?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay. Fuck shit down.
Which Side Podcast is hosted and produced by Jordan Halliday and Jeremy Parkin of the Which Side Media Collective, with web design by Jordan Halliday and sound design by Jeremy Parkin. Booking by Mari Halliday. Theme music by Commandantes. Go to whichsidecollective.org to check out the other shows in the collective. As always, fuck shit damn.